Last time, I handed my game over to some playtesters, who found a bunch of bugs and made me reconsider a lot of design decisions that I'd made. And then I asked you folks to give me the name of a game that had unique characters that felt different to play. Because after playing Children of Morta, I'd realized that my characters were kind of bland. Cosmetic options are nice, but characters with actual differences are more interesting to play. And while I was waiting for people to comment on the video, I got to work on something that I wanted to do a while ago, which was destructible objects in each room. I started by just drawing things freehand, and those things didn't come out very well. So I went looking for free assets, in the usual places like from Kenny, or Itch, or Free Game Art, and I brought them all together to see what I liked, and then I made a couple of my own to try as well, and I posted those on Twitter to see what people liked the best, and basically everybody said this one, which is based off of the art from this Itch pack. I modified the way it looked and changed the colors to match my art palette, and then I got to work on trying to make some other things for the room, like stones and tables and debris and chairs and other boxes of some kind, just to see what I could draw properly to put into the scene. So I started with the crates, putting them into the game, and changed the randomization so it wouldn't spawn the spikes in the same room as these objects, because I felt like that was just a little bit too much clutter. And then you could approach a room with traps in one way, and a room with objects in another. Hopefully that makes sense, because it did to me at the time. And then I drew destroyed versions of each asset, which were just piles of boxes and tables, because after all of the drawing, those two came out the best, so I put them into the game. I tried to add particles in when you shoot these objects, but nothing I tried really worked out. It didn't look as good as I wanted it to. So I gave them a little wobble when they got shot, and put some carpets on the floor to fill up the space, and then I needed to decide how enemies interacted with these objects. Because most enemies have a different movement style, but there were 4 that I wanted to think about specifically. The first one being the ghost, because it's a ghost, it shouldn't be stopped by physical things. And I tried to make it so that when the ghost goes through it, its opacity goes down, and it can't attack you, but you also can't attack it, so it was kind of a waiting game before you could shoot it. So instead I changed it so that when the ghost goes through a physical object, it gets a speed boost, so it kind of rushes through to get to you. And I thought that looked a little more intimidating, and was going to add an element of surprise. Then there were the bees, which should probably be able to fly over these things, but I settled on making it so that when the object is whole, they can shoot at it and break it, but they can't fly through it. But once it's broken, they can fly over it. Whereas the debris on the ground is going to stop anything that's walking on the ground. Which is where the slime comes in, because they jump, and they can do things like jump over the spikes, so they should be able to jump over these objects. Which they can, but they can only jump over them after they've broken. And then finally was the spider. I got a lot of comments from people saying that the spider should be able to pathfind around the boxes. And to that, I didn't know what to say. I mean, it's more realistic for spiders to be able to go around the objects and get to you. But when there's 6 or 7 enemies in a room, being able to trap the melee enemy behind an obstacle feels like an extra layer of gameplay where you're positioning yourself not only to dodge bullets, but to keep the melee enemies trapped. So I left that alone. Then, after reading your comments and checking up on some games, I decided that I would give each character an ability. No stat changes, just abilities that would make each one different in that way. I wanted the first character to be something basic, so I gave them an explosive shot, which is just all around pretty good. I think both the unskilled and highly skilled players are going to be able to use this to get some good shots in. Then for the second character, Gun Dudette, I wanted a movement ability, something that would help you get around the room. And after giving it a little thought, I just gave them a ninja smoke bomb kind of move, where when you right click on an area in the room, it will snap you there and create a particle effect where you were. And I feel like high skilled players are going to take advantage of this to get out of tricky situations. So there's something for offense, maneuvering, and the robot was going to be for defense. So the robot's ability requires more points to charge up, but it blocks all incoming bullets for a time, which can be really handy if you're in the middle of a storm of bullets, or if you're fighting a boss on their second phase. And then for the last character, I wanted something a little chaotic. So because they're a devil character, I gave them a flame that you can place on the ground anywhere in the room, and it will expand outwards and deal damage to whatever it hits. But when a flame hits an enemy, it goes out. So you have the choice of placing it somewhere randomly in the map to hopefully hit some enemies in the room, or you can place the first flame directly on an enemy and guaranteed do a little bit of extra damage. This one can do a lot of damage to a lot of enemies, but I think it's too unpredictable to be as useful as the other abilities. And that rounds out the characters. Now hopefully people will have a little bit more thought behind which character they pick. I also made the guns a little more diverse. I made the machine gun more machine gun-like, and the sniper rifle more sniper rifle-like. I'm sure you know what that means. And this is where I put stats into the game. Finally, in the pause menu, you can see how your gun choice and upgrades affects your stats, which is a big improvement and I really should have done it sooner. Then I got to some bug fixes because, oh boy, I thought the bug fixing was over. But people were still able to break my game in a few different ways. The biggest problem though, was glitching through the walls. I had done a lot of optimization work to make the game run smoother, but some people on some computers were still experiencing enough lag to bring their frame rate down low enough that they were able to get through the walls before the game had a chance to realize they'd done it. So what I did was raycast, which is just to create a line from the player to see where the wall is, and then record that point where the line hits the wall. So if the player manages to get through the wall, the game would have a place to put them back to. So with this part done, I made it so that when there are enemies in the room, and you're in the middle of a fight, if you go through the wall, it'll put you back at that checkpoint. But if there are no enemies left in the room, it will create a room down below, as if there was a door there, basically just forcing you back to the place you were supposed to be. So now hopefully nobody's able to break the game that way. And the last thing I did was rebalance the game, because people were getting some stupidly high scores. There was a score on the leaderboard that somebody got using an invincibility bug, basically breaking the game to get that score, and yet playtesters on their own, without that bug, just managed to beat it. So the game needed to be rebalanced so that you would die sooner, because the game has a fair amount of content, but it doesn't have enough content for you to play like 15, 20, 30 minutes before you die. The player needs to die, come back to the hub world, spend some points, go back in. 30 minutes in on a single run is just too long. It needs to be broken up with early deaths that'll make the player want to play again, as opposed to just getting bored and quitting. So the next video might be my last one on this game. So I need you to do me a favor. This design decision has kept popping up in my head. Should I or should I not add a timer to the game that kills you? Because like I said earlier, the players need to die at some point so they can go back, spend some points, and try again. Should I add a timer to the game that will make high-skilled players pick purely damage so they'll get to a point where they can die in one hit, just so they can get a higher score within that time limit? Or should I leave it the way it is so players are free to play the game at their own pace? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I think the game is the most fun when you're rushing, but it really just depends on who's playing for how long. So maybe the game will need a timer, or maybe it won't. A huge thank you to my patrons. Because of them, my coffee cup is full. And as always, the links to the places that I hang out are down below, and if you decide to click on one, then I'll see you there.